Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Secrets for an Inspirational Life. How are you all today? Wherever you are on this planet, I hope there's a little bit of peace, a little bit of laughter, and a little bit of serenity, no matter what is happening in the world, the crazy world that we're living in at the moment. I think and believe truly that the serenity and the peace that we are all searching for is something truly that we can find within ourselves. And the unhappiness and the sorrow that we can sometimes feel, and also the loneliness, is actually never satisfied through the external, the things that we can see with our eyes of the world. It's always what we can see and feel with the eyes of the heart. And what's more amazing, I think, is that when we can connect to people that we have never seen in our life, but we communicate either by phone or by the internet, and we have this connection automatically. So that, I think, shows us, in a great way, that our connection to each other goes far beyond the physical. It is something really of the soul that attracts us to somebody else. So with that in mind, I have to say to you that I am absolutely delighted to welcome my guest today, who is the lovely Jeremy Gladstone. Now, Jer, as he likes to be known, is a musician and the owner of Sleeping Bag Studios in Ottawa, in Canada. So that's right on the other side of the world, from the United Kingdom here. So that's always exciting for me when I speak to people so far away, and yet in another sort of breath, they are so close. This is, I think, the beauty of this world. Now, as well as being a music journalist, a podcaster, a blogger, he also produces videos and writes bios and press releases. He ventured into music journalism in his early 20s, taking pictures, doing album reviews, and conducting interviews in the mainstream with countless bands and artists as they began their careers. And names such as Tegan And Sarah, Our Lady Peace, Chevelle, Finger 11, and many more. That was all in the beginning, long before the journey with Sleeping Bag Studios. Now, after spending too much time, as he says, in the so-called real world, Jer quit the corporate life officially in 2012 to put his natural talents to better use. With an unmatched ear for music and insightful ways of understanding it, I have to say he's absolutely fabulous. More of that later, but he is a wonderful, wonderful writer. I cannot express that. He chose to go back into journalism, but this time for the independents that are out there. Jer now spends every waking moment on behalf of advocating for the incredible music made by musicians worldwide through Sleeping Bag Studios, which he is obviously the owner of. He posts album reviews, podcast interviews, and an internet show for SBS, which has allowed him to really, in fact, live out his dreams by being an honest voice and support for the independent music scene. And he tells me he's just getting started. Today, he shares his wonderful story. Welcome, dear Jer.
Mimi, what a fantastically gorgeous intro. I've told you before in the past that I could listen to you read the phone book, and that was gorgeous. Thank you so much for having me as your guest.
Oh, you know what? I am so honored for you to be here, really. Thank you, Jer, for joining me tonight. I don't even know, what's the time there? We've had this whole time thing, haven't we? What is the time there in Ottawa?
I know, I'm trying to sort that out. It's only 3 p.m. here. I'm wide awake for you.
Well, I'm wide awake and it's evening time here, but I sort of prepared myself for you.
There we go.
Oh, how are you? We were talking about the weather. I have to ask you about the weather. The British are obsessed, and I am actually also. How is the weather where you are?
We're actually doing okay right now. It's just like we're about maybe a week away from the last of our snow. It's gone now, and it's like people are starting to come out into the street again and walk their dogs. It's sunny. It's cool. We've got about another week here before it's going to be absolutely way too hot to go outside again.
Really? Is it that sort of drastic, the change?
It really is. Yeah, it really is. I don't know if people that are out here on the east will tell you the truth like I will, because I came from the west side of Canada, but that's the reality. Yeah, there's no fall, there's no spring. You get about 2 weeks of both, and you're right on to the extremes of the weather again, either cold or really hot.
So in about 2 weeks' time, what's the temperature going to be?
I mean, I would assume it's going to be at least around like 24s, probably pretty steady. So, I mean, it'll be still, I mean, we consider that fairly cool over here. It's when it gets way up high that, into the 30s, and it starts staying there for regular weeks at a time. That's when it gets real tough.
And how do you cope?
Air conditioning. Air conditioning.
Okay.
I'm a curmudgeon and I live inside, so it's an actual shock for my system every time I go out and take my dog Opie for a walk, because I have no idea what the weather's really like outside. I keep it nice and climate controlled in here.
That's like that feeling when you're on a plane and you've arrived on holiday because the plane doors open and the heat hits you.
Oh yeah,
it's that Absolutely. Sort of moment.
Yep, exactly. That's the front door. Front door is that plane door.
Now, you have a very interesting tale to tell. I'm sure the listeners are going to find it very intriguing. Now, I have to say to the listeners that I've said it a little bit in the intro, but Jer has an amazing way with words. He is absolutely fantastic. Not only that, it's the fact that he is able to see that and feel that what people are trying to say and not trying to say. So I think it's a hidden sort of superpower I think you've got there, Jer.
Thank you.
But how did it all, let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
How did it all begin?
Well, the very start probably just comes from an interest in music extremely early on, and a connection to it that has always come through my family. My dad was, I would say, a struggling musician as I grew up. So, when I got my first drum kit, I had gone into it's a store called Long and McQuaid. It's just a professional music equipment store that's where you buy your stuff. So, I was probably about 14 at the time, maybe 15. And I went in there and I had asked, whatever I could get to, for the money that I had kind of thing. And they showed me what was possible. And in the process there, we kind of had our own little banter, and eventually it got around to the question of, like, what does your dad do? What does he play? And, I answered, he plays keyboards. Excuse me. And he plays keyboards for, it's a club called South City in Burnaby in British Columbia. And it's no longer there. But if you've ever seen that scene in a movie where, like in a saloon where all of a sudden everybody puts down their drink at the same time and stops and turns their head and just puts their attention on you all of a sudden. That's what that moment was like. And I couldn't figure out why. And they all started to laugh. They were like, South City? You mean the world's longest house gig? And what they meant by that was that was where a lot of really, really good musicians seemed to kind of go and almost miss their own opportunity because they were spending so much time playing in, what might seem like it was a meaningless kind of job for some people. But my dad never took it that way. He put everything he had into every night that he went out there on stage. And I was lucky enough to see a bunch of rehearsals when I was a kid. Before the bars were open kind of thing. I was way too young to still go in there. But that kind of always, it kind of also led to me having this kind of childlike perception of bars and clubs. I still feel like a kid when I'm walking in there because I used to go into those places with the lights off and see how it really worked. But it was interesting to kind of to just see this perspective that people had on what that particular gig was like for him. This struggling musician that's just to make ends meet, and their notion that maybe he was missing his entire opportunity. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know that when he finally left that place, he ended up finally getting those calls to bigger and better things, which is what he does now currently. So really, he kind of sparked my entire interest in music and kind of where I focused my attention early on, whether it was playing piano early or, learning drums or guitar. I tried to learn every instrument that I could. And I listened to way more music than I actually ever played.
And is that something, Jer, that would you say was, as people say, it's in my blood that I was going to do that in my life? Is that something that propelled you in your life?
Like I get where you're coming from. I do feel that to some degree for sure. Like it's almost like there was never anything that almost appealed to me as much as music seems to. And that's kind of the way it's always been. So, if that was from a seed planted early on, or if that was just because I never explored other options, I don't know. But it's just always remained the number one constant throughout my entire life.
Now, you are the owner of a successful studio, Sleeping Bag Studios. How did you, from a young age to where you are now, how was that journey for you?
It was a long one, that I can tell you for sure, but definitely, a journey that I love talking about. And the entire distance from point A to point B almost doesn't make any sense when I look at it now. When I first got my opportunity in journalism, it was from a completely random connection in the internet. It's actually a UK-based artist, and his name is Aphex Twin. And he isn't a person that I connected to, but he is a person whose music I discovered just randomly at a bar. There was, we were just wandering the streets of Seattle of all places, and there were these sample CDs that had been left behind by somebody, and it only had 5 songs from this guy. And I put them on, and I can't even explain it, Mimi. It was like stepping into a completely different world I had no idea even existed. Like there was beautiful classical piano pieces that were just slow, melodic, just absolutely amazing. And they're still amazing to me now. And there were also these scattered electro songs that were so unlike anything I had ever experienced. And, I drove home with that on from Seattle back to just outside of Vancouver. And all I could think about was I have to figure out how I can get involved with this. I don't know what this is, but I have to find out more about this Aphex Twin guy. So I did. I got home and I logged on, I checked out, this is while I was going to school for web design, which I don't even know anything about anymore. But while I was supposed to be web designing, I was busy there, looking up to see if I could find any Aphex Twin interviews out there. And I did. And what I found blew my mind even more. You want to talk about decent with words? Check this guy out and read an interview one day. He answers questions with all consonants and numbers. Like none of it made sense, and he was deliberately kind of, what's that?
What's his name, Jer?
His name is Aphex Twin. His actual name is Richard D. James, but his artist name has always been Aphex Twin. And so I found this interview on a site called Kludge Magazine. Mm-hmm. And it was as simple as that, really. I reached out to the editor right away because what I noticed was he was one of the few at the time that seemed to have an interview with this guy. He's done more since then, but at the time it was actually pretty rare to find somebody that had got to talk to him. And even though half of the answers didn't make a lick of sense, it was still somebody that had gotten through to somebody that I thought was doing something completely groundbreaking that I'd never heard before. Mm. And so I pretty much begged this extremely nice man named Arturo Perez, who I'll forever be thankful for meeting. He gave me my first shot in what I consider to be music journalism. It's not recognized by any kind of official credentials or anything like that. But, that's where it all started for me, really, was getting to that point and getting that opportunity.
And what was it about this particular artist that, in a way, I suppose, stirred you?
I didn't understand how somebody could have such a polar extreme between what they would want to do. I think when we tend to listen to an artist or band that we like, we listen to them because they offer a specific vibe or a specific sound that we really identify with or connect to. And Aphex Twin was almost like a challenge to that. It was like, I'm going to try and do so many things, some of them that you're not even going to like. And he's even been quoted as saying directly, like, if you like my entire catalog, you're crazy. And I think to be that daring with your art was absolutely fascinating to me.
And do you think, he sounds a bit unusual, to say the least.
He's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no question about it. There are legends with him apparently like filling in shows at the last minute with nothing more than a blender and a spoon and somehow entertaining an audience for like an hour. I don't understand it myself. I wasn't there for it, but I've heard these tales. They're amazing.
So do you think, in life that they say that we are drawn to people that are, in a way, have an aspect of ourselves?
Yeah, I do agree with that for sure. I think that, what I instantly identified with in that music was how widespread it was. And what appealed to me was how that kind of opened the door for me to accept all kinds of different music. I think, a lot of my youth I was spent kind of, I'm sure like most kids do. I had a certain style of music that I liked. And even though that kind of progressed throughout the years, it was still always listening to one kind of particular style of music at the time for a certain time period. And what Aphex really kind of did for me, even though he would be considered to be just one style of music as an electro artist, he still, with his, you don't find too many that just use a single piano for an electro song, or he'll use frequencies for others that aren't even technically music, I guess. I kind of described what he does as listening to a broken answering machine. And that was what when people ask me, what do you listen to? I said, I listen to Aphex Twin. What does it sound like? It sounds like a broken answering machine. Why would you want to listen to that? And it's impossible to explain to somebody that, just because there's an experience that might make you uncomfortable, or be different doesn't mean that there's not value in it. You know what I mean? There's always something to kind of be learned and something to be explored. And I think music teaches you so much in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, most of the time, I suppose, the most uncomfortablest scenarios in our life and moments with people have been probably the greatest teachers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you want the exact history and what kind of makes what I do today even weirder, when I was in... You want weird? I'll give you weird, Mimi. Check this out.
Just go for it.
When I was in high school, I think it was in grade 9. That was when I had just finished a summer of creative writing. And I walked into what was called humanities at the time. I don't know if they had that over in the UK, but that was a combination of English and social studies. Mm-hmm. And I walked into that class on the first day, and my teacher looked at me and he kind of looked at the rest of the class, and he picked out what he figured were, I guess, 4 troublemakers or 4 people that were going to need some help. So without even having said a word to him, without having had a single class, he instantly punted me into what was basically a remedial writing class. So I had just spent my summer feeling great about myself and feeling like I had totally achieved something and learned how to be a creative writer of some kind. And then when I got to school that year, I was immediately assessed to be, should be sitting at the back of the class. And I got put into this special group of like 4 people. And the only thing that we did day after day when we went to this class week after week was we did compare and contrast. So it was just kind of, it was a different form.
What does that mean? What's that about? Compare?
Well, it's like, it's basically just comparing 2 different things to each other and understanding what it is that there are what similarities exist and what differences exist, and kind of examining the relationship between those things, which ends up kind of really being the basis for a lot of what I do now. So in terms of, being put on some kind of path that you don't even always know that you're going to be on, that to me at the time absolutely seemed like punishment. I didn't even understand why I was in that class. In terms of writing, I was outwriting those other 3 people that I got selected with to the nth degree. And, that was just the reality of how it went. I didn't feel like I belonged there. So if anything, I pushed myself harder to kind of show them that, you've given me the wrong assessment here. You've given me a first glance and judged me, but this is what I can do. And, aside from that, eventually I would also get to about grade 11 later on. And that version of me started actually replacing his books in his locker with a sleeping bag. So believe it or not, I used to pull out my sleeping bag in the middle of whenever I had a break, or, if I didn't have a class scheduled for that block, I would pull out a pillow and a sleeping bag and I'd be sleeping right there in the hall. Nobody else was doing that. That was definitely frowned upon. But at the same time, kind of weird that I ended up being, the head of a place called Sleeping Bag Studios too, right?
And they allowed you to do that?
Well, they would definitely not go out of their way to disturb me too much, basically. If I was laying in their way or too far out into the hallway, they'd tell me to rein it in. But other than that, they pretty much it was me. I don't know how to explain it. I kind of had, I guess, a bit of a weird grace with teachers. It was one of those things they'd kind of just look at me and go, okay, that's just Gladstone doing what he does again. We'll just let him do it. I was never harmful to anybody, right? I was just sleeping.
That's very interesting, because I had a teacher, and I think the teachers in our life, can really shape our destinies and our futures in a way, because I had a teacher and I was always writing stories. And this particular teacher, which was in lower school, so that's sort of between the ages of, I think it's 9 and 12. And she was a bully. And whatever I wrote, it was never good enough.
Right.
But I was determined because I always wanted to write, and I always, wrote, but it was never good enough. So it was shocking, like it was for you, in that, how is it that people don't understand what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to write? luckily, I left that school and I moved on to an upper school, and I met another teacher, and she was the English literature teacher. And she said to me, you know, you're just going to scrape by with your exams, with your writing. And I thought, I can't believe this. You know, this is just nonsense, you know. How? Yeah. And I was like yourself, you know, it's shocking at that age. I was about 13. It was devastating. And everything that I gave in, you know, for her to mark was wrong. It was never right. It was never good enough.
Right.
And one day I had a showdown with her and I said, listen, I was only 13. And I said, I am trying my best. And she said, yes, I don't think you are.
Wow.
Yeah. So I said, what do you mean? And she said, you're not trying your best because I know that you can do better.
Right.
And we had this standoff, you know, like two cats can have it, you know, where who's going to be the stronger one. And I said, but I'm trying to be a writer. And she said,
right.
I'm going to help you, but you're going to have to do what I'm telling you. So I was determined, you know, like you, I was determined, and I started to really go within myself and really search what I really wanted to say and have the courage, because that's one of the things, isn't it, Jer? We don't have the courage to say the things that we want to say.
Oh, yes.
You know, and I want so much to say, but there's no one to say it to. And there's millions of people, but someone that would actually understand. And then one day she came and she was giving everybody the papers back. And then she was smiling and in front of the whole class. And she said, I had a little conversation. And I said, right. I thought, what's she going to say? She's going to embarrass me. You know, at 13, you're easily embarrassed. And I spoke to another friend of mine. I said, right. And do you know what he said to me? And I said, no. And he said to me, this girl is going to be an author one day. Mark my words.
Wow.
And at that moment, Jer, I knew I had crossed this line within myself that gave me this unshakable courage. And I wanted to ask you, is that similar to what you went through with this class? And look where you are now to where you were then. I mean, how would one know that the experience of that teacher would actually be of benefit to you?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, you know, I'm continually blown away by just how much I remember what that class was like and how similar it can be to the way that I listen to music now, and I'm able to draw comparisons to different places or different, comparisons that make sense. You know, like I'm just kind of dialed in to do my work and that's probably through the conditioning of that. And I think, you know, if anything, the entire experience of being put in that position is really what taught me more than anything else, right? It taught me to want to be hungry for what I do. And it taught me to kind of, you know, if this is the perception that I'm somehow lacking in this particular skill, and this happens to be the one and only skill that I feel like I have some ground and some passion for, well, you better believe I'm going to do my best to work myself out of that, right? And I thought maybe that was the idea. I thought maybe the harder I worked, the more I would maybe get put back into the regular class or whatever as it was. But that was never really part of it. It was an experimental program that they were running from the University of British Columbia, where they had student teachers that were running. So, they were supposed to be checking in on us years down the road, but that never happened. So that was kind of weird. But similar to you, I think the experience that I had that was closest to that was actually probably in grade, I think 12 at this point. And so now the guy that was once in remedial, whatever it was that they wanted to call that class I was in, I'm now in advanced placement English in grade 12. I have no problem excelling. That's the one and only class I'm interested in. My teachers are regarding me as the accidental genius because they could tell me that it's, make sure you stick around after class because we've got a meeting, and I'd be the first guy with my books and up and ready to go, not because I was trying to get out of it, but because I'd probably forgot in that short amount of time. So, I didn't really still give it my full focus like I perhaps should have, but it still came naturally enough for me to get by in a very convincing way. And where I ran into a real head with it was when we started writing speeches. And I had written a speech that was regarding my brother, who is mentally handicapped, and he has been his entire life. And he eventually developed epilepsy, and he's had a wealth of problems that, are just well beyond his control kind of thing. And I wrote this really, I don't, it feels too grand to say it was a powerful speech, but I wrote what I thought I could put into it. I gave it the passion and heart that I felt like I could bring to it, and, what was really important to me. And at the end of it, I either brought tears to the entire crowd or I got a standing ovation from the class. It was a good mix of both. And it was an incredible reception and response. And I was absolutely elated that not only did I get to make that much of an impression, but that the material itself meant something to me. It was really close to the heart. And my teacher called me into his office at the end of that day. And I didn't really know why. And what followed was what I thought at the time to be one of the most discouraging moments I think I've ever experienced. When I closed that door, he looked furious. And he looked at me and he said, "Did you write that speech for yourself, or did you write that for somebody else?" And I still don't really know what the answer to that is, if I'm being entirely honest. I mean, I only wrote it because it was a school assignment, if you want the fundamentals, but the reality is I wrote it because it was important to me. And I think what his lesson there was, even though it was well received by the people that were listening, it was still a consider your audience kind of message. And I think that always really stuck with me. Right or wrong, I don't know if he was right or wrong. I think it almost kind of taught me the opposite in a way. I felt like the more personal you can make something, the more it means something to everyone.
Yes. Yeah. I agree with you there. And how did you find the courage to write the way that you do and be so expressive in what you're saying? Because I am totally convinced that you have this sixth sense. I know that everybody has. It's just some people are more attuned to it. But you do have this sixth sense of feeling the other person. Well, and how you write is extraordinary.
Thank you. Endless thanks for saying something like that. And is it a superpower? I don't know. I think it comes from listening. And I think that is what I recognize the most. I recognize a deficiency out there in terms of how people were communicating with musicians specifically. There are so many people out there that, and you can probably think of some yourself, where maybe a friend has shown you a song or something, and they are craving that feedback so badly. And the main people that they know that they can get that from are friends and family. And unfortunately, friends and family, for the most part, will tell you the great things. Unless you've got that really one honest brother or sister, chances are most people are going to play it middle of the road, and they're just going to say, "Hey, it was good. Hey, thanks for sharing." And that's not the feedback that kind of effort in art or music deserves, in my opinion. It deserves so much more examination. You don't have to be overly critical or mean, to be honest, and I think that's the mistake that a lot of people in my particular field tend to make, is that they assume that any kind of being critical is going to somehow damage the relationship between them and what they consider to be their client. I don't really think of things on that level. It doesn't really, I hope people stick with me, and I hope they are quote unquote clients for years, if that's what we want to call them. But really why I hope they stick with me is because, they get some genuine insight and feedback that they're not going to find in any other kind of run-in-the-mill place. Most of my peers write a paragraph. For me, I write about 2 pages minimum on almost everything I do. And it's shocking to me that that's okay with them. That's what bugs me. It's not so much, I know that, again, the struggling artists out there or bands, they don't almost know any otherwise. That's what they assume they're going to get, is a tiny little blurb that basically says the same thing that the friends and family are going to tell them. Hey, good for you, pat on the back. And I think the effort absolutely deserves so much more than that. I guess, again, maybe it's just having grown up in a musical household and understanding how much time goes into the actual creation of a song from start to finish, that, you get this appreciation for just how much is involved in everything that they do, and being able to listen and actually try and understand what it was that made that song come to life to begin with. It's extraordinary. You have the option and the ability to write about anything. That as an author. As a songwriter, it's the same. They have that ability, and to almost hear and see what are the similarities? What are the differences? What do we all write about? What don't we write about? There's lots of different kind of elements that tie the entire scene together.
Now, I agree with you, absolutely, with regards to that, Jer. And I want to ask you, with regards to when music it's something that has been part of my life, I think, since I was born, and pre that, there is a certain magic to it. There is something that's totally unexplainable. I don't think you can ever put it into words. You can be in one mood and you can put the music on, and then you're suddenly in a completely different mood. And it affects us, in many ways, vibrationally, energetically, in so many ways. And it's such an important part of our lives, I believe. But tell me, what do you, in your experience and expertise and your feeling, what do you think it is that in humans, it actually, what is it that stirs people with regards to music?
That might be the best question I think I've ever been asked, Mimi. That is such an insightful question to have asked. And I wish there was any kind of one answer to it. I think it almost breaks my heart that there's not. Like, in a way,
yeah,
there are so many things about music that connect to me so strongly that I absolutely look at people like they're crazy when they don't feel the same thing that I feel. It's almost foreign to me. It's just absolutely beyond comprehension. I look at that as it should almost be universal. And I think in contrast, to a large degree, it is to the people that are passionate about music. The things that connect are sincerity, melody, passion. To me, there's absolutely always a difference between hearing somebody that's really good at making music and somebody that's really interested in making music. And there's a complete difference between those two.
Yeah, very true, very true. And what do you think it is that, I suppose, stirs people to the point of tears and emotion in music?
I think when it comes to that, I think it's definitely based a lot on personal interpretation and how that particular song or artist, pushes a button with something that we've personally experienced. Personal identification with what you're listening to, it accounts for so much. And I think that, that's kind of the ground floor. That's how we should all be listening to music, really, when it comes right down to it. That's what you want to find. You want to find that connection, that thing that pulls you in. And I think, to me, the more exciting part, again, was the challenge of, okay, well, can I take that principle of, liking that one thing and can I find something to like in everything almost? It's not that I'm necessarily going to go out and listen to these records that I listen to on a daily basis for the rest of my life, but can I understand from the artist's point of view what it was that they were trying to say? Can I understand what it is that drove them to want to create and put something into the universe that's always going to be there? And I think that that's such an important question to ask. And it's surprising almost how split it is out there when it comes to kind of getting to that. Some people do consider that. Some just don't.
Because every person, for me, when I don't know about you, Jer, but every person that I look at is a music. It's a symphony. And in a way, I look at people as pieces of music.
That's a beautiful assessment. So you mean like each kind of part of your personality is like, the oboe, the trumpet, the saxophone kind of thing. And that's a beautiful, beautiful perspective. I love that. That.
That's what I look at it. I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but it's like every single one of us is a symphony of sort.
It's very true. Like on the inside of us, there's so many different things that account for, our emotions or how we're going to deal with something, or the drama or the tension or the intensity.
Yeah, exactly that.
All of these things. And you can almost see it in your mind. Like, I'm going to do that now. Now I'm going to be like, okay, that's my emotional cortex or whatever, firing up the tuba to get the drama going in my day or something like that. It's going to be great.
Yeah. And when I meet people, whether it be, physically or through the phone or whatever, and I think all of us do this to a point, is that we feel them first. I always believe, people think that I wrote about this, but, you think you meet somebody with your eyes, but in fact, you meet them with your soul.
Right.
And I think it's whether the music in them is sort of resonating with the music within you, whether together you can play a symphony.
Absolutely. You're right on to something here, Mimi. I think you've got your next book here, because that's perfect.
I'm saying?
That's very true. I mean, for me, when I grew up and, and I'm meeting friends and people for the first time, that's of course the first place that I would gravitate to. If I ever visited your house, the first thing I did was wander over to the CD rack or the record player or whatever it was you had and take a look and take stock of your collection. And right away it was, I guess to me, it's always been such a guide in terms of values and perspective that, I wouldn't say I necessarily consider some music harmful, but I do consider some music to just be that. It's a good time, and it's not going to necessarily kind of help further the evolution of mankind or humanity or anything like that. So there are certain artists, however, that do. And I think when I would look over a collection or something like that, it was almost, or have that conversation with somebody about music, it was a quick assessment of, will I be able to have that symphony with you? Because if you've got those like interests, guaranteed you're going to have a whole lot more.
Yes, that's exactly right. Can we, in a way, play music together? Can we create something together?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really hard. Like, it's one of the things I always talk to bands about, is that, it's it is a really hard thing to understand the possibility of having like a 4 or a 5 player group where everybody's needs of expression and creativity are actually met and satisfied within that band. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Because like there's so many people that have so many wants and so many needs, and a song is, you know, exponentially long or however long they want to make it, and everybody wants to put their input in there. And it's really important actually for a band to make sure that they're taking the care to make sure that that happens. Otherwise they are doomed to be one of those bands that split up. You know, you kind of have to have that understanding of how much people want to contribute to that art, to that entire legacy that you're creating in music or art or whatever it happens to be that you do. And it's tough. I think it's really tough for them to all meet that criteria where everybody feels like they've been fully represented and gets their full say in what they're doing.
Yeah, that's not an easy thing, because I know a few people that are in bands, and a lot of them have split up purely because of this. But do you think that also in human relationships, this is something that interests me, it's also the same thing with regards to, can any of us really express ourselves in a way that we feel that we're being heard?
I think so. And, you know, to be bluntly honest, I think conversations like this are fully proof of that. You know, I think there are certain people that you meet in life that you automatically know that you can talk to without a filter, or without any kind of pretense or worrying about whatever it is that, you know, I don't know if they're going to run and tell the tabloids or TMZ. I have no idea, but you get the idea. I think there are just some people that we naturally gravitate to, and chances are not only is there a reason for that, but they're probably going to add significantly to your life with some sort of a piece of your puzzle that you might not have even known was missing.
That's a very beautiful way to put it. And that's rare, though, isn't it?
To find it? Absolutely. You know, there's I can't even express the difference in talking to you, Mimi, as opposed to so many people that I've met for the first time. And you know, it was kind of like the moment that you picked up the phone, I feel like we just talked last week when in fact we never have. You know what I mean? So I think it's just, you know, it's an inexplainable connection that some people have. And I think other people that have it are able to recognize it within the people that do. And I think, you know, it still takes a certain amount of boldness for somebody to acknowledge that, you know. I think it's something that we still kind of, or at least from my own perspective, I know it's something that it almost feels like it's fictional, you know, until you kind of run into people that confirm that those connections are deeper than what maybe you thought.
Yeah, I agree totally. And Jer, do you think that at this time in the world, especially, that people are afraid to, in a way, show themselves for who they really are and to express that which really means something to them?
Probably of two minds about that one. I think it's, you know, I think it's interesting. I think the perception is that with the, you know, advent of social media being as used as it is today, and I think a lot of people think that what they see in a bunch of all capitalized letters is somebody out there telling it like it really is.
Yeah.
But a lot of that is no different and no more for show than somebody that would do that in real life. You know, just it's a tough thing to say that the authenticity is always there, but it quite often can be. Sorry, I've gotten sidetracked a little bit here.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's just wonderful. I like that. When people get sidetracked, I always think, well, where's this little road going to take us down now?
Right. Yeah. I've been on the other side of an interview enough to know that sometimes you better just cut it short and be like, okay, I've lost
You're
my
the
way.
expert.
Yeah.
You're the expert. But I had a funny experience actually yesterday, and people always, they never actually cease to amaze me, I have to say. Not a lot shocks me, Jer, but there are moments to it. And yesterday I had to have my car go to the garage, and the guy that usually deals with the car, he's just a particular type of person. He was okay, but he was sort of reserved, and always the reserved type. But yesterday he totally surprised me. He brought the car back, and I said, "How are you? And how's life?" And da 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 da, and as you do. And he was very friendly and very open, and like a completely different person. And I said to him, "How are you? And how's life? And how are things in life?" And he said, "Yeah, they're good." I said, "Well, you seem a little bit different." I can be blunt. One has to be sometimes. And I said, "But you seem a bit different." And he said, "Yes." He said, "I had a wake-up call." And I said, "Well, of course, this is going to intrigue me." So I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, what was the wake-up call?" And he said, "You know what, Mimi? I realised that life is literally a moment away from dying." And I suddenly thought to myself, through everything that's been going on, and they've had a lot of time off, obviously, and, being locked down and everything, I suddenly realized, he said, that I have to live my life and I have to tell people what I really think. Mm-hmm. He said, and I am totally liberated with it.
Makes a huge difference when you get to that point, for sure.
Yeah,
because it's too short to do otherwise. It really is.
Do you know what, Jer? I always say to myself, I've had experience of this, sadly, in life, where you see someone for the last time, but you don't know it's the last time.
Right.
And it's happened enough in my life for me to whoever I meet, always say what you want to say, because you might not get another chance.
It's very true. It's good advice.
And some people say, well, that's sad. It is in a way, but in another way, it's actually quite liberating.
It can be, yeah. You had a track on your last album that kind of referenced a little bit of that too, and having the courage to walk away if you need to, right? Mm. And some of those situations, some of the people you meet, they add and some people subtract, and we all need to be able to identify, I guess, what those connections are going to bring to our lives, not out of some sort of self-serving way, but just an understanding of whether or not they are literally going to add or subtract.
And that's important, isn't it, in life, to actually recognize, is that person bringing something to my life that gives my heart peace?
Absolutely.
Or joy?
Yeah.
And that's
absolutely.
a scary place to be sometimes, isn't it?
It can be. Yeah, for sure. I've had, I guess I would say, similar experiences as other people in terms of having to let somebody go, or, just say goodbye too early, or, even the person that I initially started the studio with, when our partnership didn't work out at the beginning, we were still best friends at the time, and we had to navigate through that as well. And that something like that is simply because that connection was, way too strong beyond business. It wasn't something that any kind of project we would take on would ever damage. It was, if this didn't work out, that's fine. We're still friends, because that connection it runs so much deeper than that.
Yeah, sometimes, as we spoke earlier, people are not as we imagine them to be. We have a whole story going on, in our minds sometimes of how we think the situation is. But in reality, it can be something completely different. And that's sometimes hard to actually live with, I think.
It can be. Yeah. I mean, I'll give you one here, Mimi. Here's a story for you. This is the story that ties right into that, and just not knowing where you're going. How do I start it? I guess the best way I could put it was the younger version of me, the video clerk guy. I used to have this crush on a customer that would come in all the time. And it was to the point where she would walk in the door and my whole face would go red. I mean, I was like 16 or 17, it was one of those things. Everybody on staff would point and laugh at me when she was gone and be like, oh, you like her, whatever. Anyway, she moves away, or she's about to move away. And it was kind of one of those things. We both knew it, but we didn't really have the opportunity. I was with somebody at the time. She was with somebody at the time. But every time she was in the store alone, we both knew that was there. We just didn't say anything about it. And then it got to the point where she tells me that she's about to move 3 provinces away. So I wasn't going to see her every Friday night like I used to. And I never got that opportunity to say the things that I should have said. So in the middle of a busy Friday night lineup, I just held my hand up to the next customer and said, you're going to have to wait. And I walked over to her and I said, hey, I don't know what this was, but I know that we both felt whatever that was. And I'm really sorry that we didn't get that opportunity, because it feels like we should have had it. And, I hope, I don't know, I really wish you well, and best of luck to you, kind of thing. There wasn't much else I could say at the time. And, she thanked me. We had a hug, and it was acknowledged, kind of thing. And that was really all you kind of expected to happen, or at least I expected to happen. And as it turns out, 3 years down the road, I had already been working at several different stores, this video chain that we were in. I was, kind of one of those utility pieces that they could move all over the place. So I had been in different stores, and I ended up back in my old store 2 days after she moved back 3 provinces back to her, where she called home as well, in BC. And on my first shift, she walked right through the door. Like no time had passed whatsoever. And there she was. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, what are you even doing here? You don't live here. I don't work here. This is inexplainable. So how does this make any sense? And how do we make sense of this? Because clearly we're being given another opportunity here to maybe correct.
Oh my goodness.
And so I said, I'm all in here. I'm not passing this up again. And I'm all in here. I don't know what it is this to me is the stars lining up as much as they possibly could, telling me that I am absolutely supposed to pursue you for some reason. So if this makes sense to you, I don't know, we should date or something. And so that happened. And now the story gets extremely complicated in the sense that she was like, I don't know if she was ever married, but she was separated at the time. She now had a kid. So she had, that's a totally different circumstance. She wasn't pushing a stroller when I knew her before, but now she had a child. And I had to kind of think to my own childhood. I've had 3 dads in total. 4 dads in total with a father-in-law. So there's, I understand kind of what that role is like on a kid, and it can be tough. And I had to consider whether or not that was something I was willing to do. But I was more determined, I think, than anything to follow this path wherever it was going to lead. And so her ex happened to be a really troubled dude. He was unfortunately the kind of guy that would phone her from the driveway and be like, I'm going to kill myself with a combination of heroin and bleach right now. You should call the ambulance. And he would do that. And he would do that right there in the driveway, pump his veins full of chemicals of all kinds, whatever, it didn't matter. And the ambulance would come by, resuscitate him, and we would do the entire thing again the next week, the week after that. And it just seemed like this is the way things are going to go. I know it's a long story, but basically the gist of it is this girl that had once walked into a video store just like any other customer. Now I'm really involved. We're living together. And we had just got this place in Coquitlam, about a town away from where I grew up. And she said, we got to pack up and we got to go. Where are we going? Well, we're moving out east to Winnipeg, to where her mom and dad were, so they could be safe, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to go? Do you not want to go? And that was the biggest decision I ever had to make in my life, because I had never stepped a foot out of BC. I'd never been to another continent. I hadn't traveled anywhere. Even outside of my own province, it was like very minimal exposure. So the idea of me leaving everything behind and going to the other side of Canada was almost unfathomable to me. But the only thing that pushed me again, Mimi, was this whole idea that how could all of this happen without there being some sort of a reason behind it? There has to be something.
Yeah.
So I stuck with it, and I told my job, I said, I'm really sorry, but this is what I'm doing now. I'm just going to go, and I'm going to help keep them safe, and I'm going to make sure they need to get to where they go, and hopefully things work out, and hopefully things go the way that, hopefully I can build a life out there, and let's go see what the new frontier is like, right? It's a very exciting time. And I get there, and I wouldn't say everything necessarily changed, but once we got her and her kid to a place where she was safe and she knew that she was going to be protected by mom and dad, and she didn't have to worry about this guy, kind of stalking her day after day from where he was in BC. I don't want to say that I became redundant kind of thing, but it was pretty apparent that I guess as a function, I guess I had kind of ceased to have a use. And I don't say that out of any kind of spite or any kind of regret. I am very happy about the role that I played there. And what made it incredible was because everybody hears that story and they're like, wow, like what an incredible tale of love. And it seems like it doesn't have this great ending. But there's so much more to it. I get back home and there's no real place for me. I don't really have a ton of money because I've basically spent it traveling across Canada and moving my stuff around and getting new places and stuff. And all of the things that I owned never made it to Winnipeg. They got stopped by a court order in the middle of Canada by the ex-husband who, it's a long story, but that's basically, I lost everything I owned right then. So I had a suitcase.
Oh my goodness.
I had a suitcase, not so much money. And thankfully I had my dad who was at least still willing to take me in. And so, I and I used to live there. So it was, it's not a huge deal. But the fact was the basement suite that I used to live in, well, they rented that out because I was gone, right? They didn't think I was coming back. So when I got back, the only place that I could stay was actually in their garage on a broken lawn chair, nothing more than a suitcase of clothes, my music collection, which never left my side, and probably a book full of poetry. And when I came back to BC, I would say I would say I felt pretty broken at the time because I didn't understand at all what that whole journey meant. I couldn't make sense of what I had just been through and how far I had moved my life to kind of make this happen. And then there she was, the real purpose. It was my wife. And I didn't know that at the time, but I found this fantastic lady who was willing to look past the fact that I didn't have a place. I didn't have any money. I was living on a broken lawn chair in a garage with his parents. Not exactly your most attractive commodity as far as a person can go in terms of what they can potentially offer a life or some kind of stability.
Yeah.
And she saw past through all of that somehow. And I don't know how, still to this day, but when I got back, I got moved right to, like, I was still fortunate enough to maintain my job with the video store at the time. So they had transferred me back, but they couldn't transfer me back to the same store I used to be at because that ex-husband guy was causing problems there, even though I wasn't there. So they didn't want to take the chance of putting me back there. They moved me to a different store, and that store just so happened to have my wife there as well.
He was working there.
Yeah, she was working there at the time, just part-time. And she actually just stepped down from the position as assistant manager to become a supervisor again. And I went in as her boss. So it's kind of, I wasn't really the boss. We were actually peers, right? But at the same time, it was just completely random circumstance, one after the other. All these things led to that moment of being into that store and finally getting to really meet this person. And whenever I needed a ride to go to like a store meeting or something like that, she was always close by. And the manager of the store would be like, "Hey, do you mind giving Jer a ride over to such and such store," kind of thing. And she was always nice enough to help out. Whether or not that was because she was interested in me or not, I don't know. But it was those kind of, dominoes that seemed to fall all in a row within about what felt like a whirlwind 3-month experience, probably at max. And then I knew right away, there was just no question that this was the person that I was meant to be with, and that was somehow the bizarre and twisted path that led me to her.
What a story.
Yeah, I feel like I talked for a bit there.
What a story.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, she's, I always tell people when they hear that story, I mean, there's certain people in life, that you can trust. And when somebody has met you at your lowest of your low and they're not even remotely scared of it, if anything, they want to help you grow out of it or whatever, that I think is one of the best moments you can ever experience in life. And it's something you never forget.
You are blessed, really, Jer, because people rarely, if ever, find somebody like that in their life. It's such a rare occurrence. And I have to ask, did you know that she was the one as soon as you laid eyes on her?
Technically, no. That was part of what kind of made it beautiful to me, because really she had been working at this store that wasn't too far away from me. And the store that I worked at while I was still there before I had moved to Winnipeg, right? So I did see her every once in a while. And my staff would kind of give me a little bit of a hard time about it. They would say, "Hey, that Becky lady, we think she likes you," kind of thing. And I'd be like, "Whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm so focused on this whole other scenario where this lady has come out of the complete blue after 3 years of being away at the same time that I did, and I have to follow this path." I was so set on that one person that it was almost like I had the blinders up completely. And following that path kicked me all the way back to where I was to be like, "No, you missed it. Go and take another look." That's the way I looked at it. And, to find a person that was willing to, I guess, just be that giving of herself at a time where I felt like I was questioning everything. Just what on earth did I just do in uprooting my entire childhood to go and move across Canada and lose everything I owned in the process. It was unfathomable. And just to have this person never shy away from that, never back down, always be there. And, it did make me think, back to the times where she would pop into the store. And it's a story that I still tease her about to this day, because she would come in and she would be like, I heard that new Pedro the Lion album, and she would chat me up. Pedro the Lion is the specific one that I use to bug her about all the time, because she doesn't know a single song by Pedro the Lion. And I didn't know that for years. But that was just something that she knew that I had an interest in music. So she kind of put that out there and kind of just tried to lead me in a little bit through conversation. And I always fell for it. I would always be like, oh, right on. You like Pedro the Lion. Cool. Do you like this song, and this song? Or whatever it was that we happened to be talking about. So she baited me a little bit. But, at the end of the day, it was one of those things that I didn't even realize until later on, just how the answer was right there in front of me. And, I didn't get the exposure to it like I did when I got the chance to work with her every once in a while. That was when we really got to know each other. But really, the universe had already kind of tried to put that in front of me a couple of times and be like, hey, this is something, and you're supposed to be paying attention. And I had my blinders up, and I kept, I don't even know if that's fair to say. I feel like I had my eyes open, and I thought I was following the absolute path I was supposed to be on. I just didn't know where it was going to lead, is all.
And that's a great lesson, though, as well, isn't it, Jer? Where we think someone is the destination, but in fact, they're only the bridge.
Yeah, absolutely, right? I thought that was the answer. And then to find out that not only was it not, but that there was something even better. I mean, how does that not teach you to hang on through no matter what it is that you're going through in life?
Yes.
I think that something, I grew up as a teenager with, my mom has got all kinds of experiences with depression. And I think that, a lot of that translated over to me as I grew up as a kid, and raging hormones and whatnot. But you get that speech that everything gets better. And at the time as a kid, I don't think there was anything I didn't want to hear like less, like that was the worst thing you could say to me. I don't want to hear that right now, but it's so true. That's the thing. And you don't know that until later on, until you're older, until you've had a chance to really take some setbacks and understand that on the other side of that setback is something so incredible that you have no concept of, that you just need to follow it out.
That is beautiful advice, because there's so many people out there now, and every single one of us, I truly believe this, that has been through something so life-changing, if not once in a lifetime, many times in a lifetime. And what we think is, as you thought with the other lady, was your final destination. And, as I said earlier, we build a story in our mind of how things are and how things are going to be. And pretty much a lot of the time, it's nowhere near that scenario in real life, is it?
No, I mean, this one certainly wasn't. I guess I saw things I was capable of doing, but not necessarily things that I ever felt like I should be doing. I liked the idea of being there for this lady and her kid and helping in that process, keeping them safe. But that wasn't, it wasn't much beyond that. There wasn't a feeling like I necessarily really belonged in that situation. So when it came time to cut ties and end it, it was sad, because I had moved everything. But, at the same time, it still made some sort of sense to me that part was not the final spot, like the final destination, like you said.
And what's interesting about the first lady is that you knew, I think we know this, I'm convinced of this actually, that we meet people for an absolute reason. And sometimes we just really don't know what it is until maybe the event is over. But I do believe that she came into your life and you recognized each other from another level. I think on a soul level, that you had to help each other.
Quite possibly. Yeah.
And, in a way, you set her free and she set you free to find love.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of looking at it. And I like to, I probably haven't thought about it quite in such eloquent terms, but that is definitely how I kind of made peace with it myself, right? Because it was a bit of a traumatic experience in the sense that there was just so much activity and so much upheaval of a life going on. But at the same time, it was such a unique and significant connection, and still one that's far beyond anything like I've ever experienced to this day, in that sense that, it is weird that I didn't see my wife at that first glance, like you had mentioned. It was this other girl that I felt that attraction to at first. That was what really kind of sparked that whole path. But like you said, it was just kind of some sort of ingrained something on the inside that, it is impossible to put into words. It's just, I've known you before, and how,
It wouldn't do it justice. Words wouldn't do it justice. But
No.
I totally understand what you're saying. And in a way, we go through relationships with people, whether that be partners or friends or family. And each one, I definitely believe this, that we have an appointed time. And sometimes you're thinking, what the hell am I doing in this, relationship or with these people? I don't understand it, but I can't leave. And it's as if we know there's an appointed time, a set time that we're going to be with these people.
Absolutely. I mean, there are far too many instances of that for it to just be some kind of happy accident, right? Like it's gotta be. Yeah, 100% hear you on that one for sure.
And in a way, you were rewarded, with your wife, with the love of your wife, and by helping this other lady. So really, love cast its sort of beauty upon all of you, but just in different ways.
It's so many blessings out of that, Mimi. I can't even explain. Think of it this way. Not only did I get that fantastic ultimate prize, I mean, she is a absolutely amazing lady. We've been together since 2004 now. So, I mean, that's a healthy long time. But, there were things beyond that I didn't even understand as well. Like, losing everything is something that quite a few people unfortunately do experience out there. But it's certainly something I hadn't experienced before. And that was unique to me. It really taught me about loss in an incredible way, but also about what was really important. I had lost a bed and a computer and, I don't know, maybe a night table. So what? I can buy that stuff again eventually. It doesn't have to be overnight. I'll get it, but the things like my old storybooks or my poetry and stuff like that was heartbreaking, to lose pictures and whatnot. Those kinds of things were so devastating to, I still feel like one day I'm just going to, stumble upon this truck out there and it's going to have all this treasure of my childhood and all my memories, my old stuffed bunnies and teddy bears, and it's all going to be there. But it's not. It's gone. And you know what? None of it really mattered because I kept all those memories. The important ones, they're all still with me. So it's one of those things. We get attached so much to physical things. And, do I love modern convenience? Do I love the things that I have now? Of course I do. I'm no different than anybody else when it comes to that. But do I need them? No. And, a lot of people don't really know that about themselves, whether or not they do or what it is that they really do need to kind of get by. And I think when you have that experience of you've just lost everything, you really realize what is important and what it is that's going to bring you back. And for me, that was a lot about love.
Well, love rescues all of us in some way.
Yeah.
And I think that when things are going okay, as we would say, okay, I think there is no opportunity for growth. But I think when we're hit with a crisis in life, it's at that point of chaos, is that we suddenly can become free, because at that point we're free to change.
Very true. I'd written a song not too long after that. It was called "Nothing Means Anything," and it was such an amazing 3 words to me, Mimi. I'm not even kidding. That to me represented so much, and I think what I loved about it was such an ambiguous statement that for some reason so many people kind of took in a negative comment or context, like, well, nothing means anything. That's one way to say it, but that wasn't how I heard it. I heard nothing means anything, as in, like, your back is against the wall when you've hit rock bottom, when you've hit your lowest of the low. Nothing means anything is possible.
Absolutely. That's how I understood it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, that was just kind of one of my own little mini creative breakthroughs that really kind of helped me allow to kind of push forward, I guess, in life, and just realizing that there is no ultimate setback that I can't find my way through. And that, again, as cheesy as it sounds, things get better. They really do.
And that's what's important to hold on to. The line is fantastic, actually. Did you go and release the song, or what did you do with it?
Oh, it's in a catalog of about 600 other ones that just kind of sit around on a hard drive somewhere. And you know how I am, Mimi. I'm not always the self-promotional type as much as I should be. I'm out there promoting everybody else and what they do. But when it comes to my own stuff, it's always just kind of been a personal hobby or a diary of sorts that's allowed me to kind of express myself and again, in terms of just finding that person that allows you to do that. That's always been the other half of my 2-person band. That's that same guy I was telling you about, I think pre-show, where, he had met me through the walk on an alley and just simply said, "Hey, you've got more inside your head and I want to know all about it." Well, that kind of person is the exact kind of person that, you drop that veil of insecurity and you're just able to just be who you are. And, I've since, I think, I have a few collaborations every once in a while that I take on just kind of as a hobby kind of thing. But in terms of making a song and handing it to a set of ears that I always knew wasn't going to judge me, that was my outlet. That was my creative outlet, was always having that other half of my band, that guy that I knew I could count on to just listen, and it could be about anything. I didn't have to worry about, like, do we want to be a political band, or do we want to write romance songs, or any, whatever it was that came up, whatever the music inspired me to write about, was what kind of came out onto our songs. And I think that's, it's just one of the real gifts. Again, art inspires art in so many ways.
Oh, yes, this is really true. Yeah. And I'm going to ask you, and I've asked you this before, but I know you said I can ask whatever I like.
Anything at all.
I'm going to ask you the secrets of the universe. We'll have to work that out on our own, each and every one of us. I think that's the point, isn't it? But in a way, you are hiding a little bit, aren't you, from this? I don't know. It's like you are only available to those that can really see who you are.
I could not have put that better than you just put it right there. That is exactly the truth. As I told you before, yes, I am hiding a little bit for sure. But at that same time, also, like you just pointed out, when somebody recognizes that or even gives me a little bit of an inch, a tiny little opportunity to get in there, I use my skills to the absolute maximum of their potential. And I can promise you that, if I have that ability to affect somebody in some way, shape, or form, and I can see that avenue and that path to do it, and I think it's going to benefit them for sure, I'm absolutely there every time. The last thing I'd want to ever do is kind of be some detriment to somebody's life, or not be that thing that adds but subtracts, right? So I focus very hard on, what is it that I can do to kind of help somebody evolve or help them get better. And then I get to this other weird place, an even weirder place, Mimi, where I'm like, I have no right to feel like I should be doing that or affecting anybody's path because they're living their own lives. So it's kind of like this push-pull balance between, this is the person I think you can be, and this is the person I want you to be. But really, I should be accepting you for the person that you are, and just encouraging that, and nourishing that, and accepting that, and helping you grow to be that person, but not because that's what I think, just because of that should hopefully be the course and the path that you're on.
But you know what, Jer? The thing is, I think there's a time and a place for everything. Yeah. And I feel this. It's like, when people have these highly spiritual places that they go to and they need to be revived, and they go there, and I don't know if you've ever had this experience, or it could be with a person, and suddenly after talking to them or visiting a place, you get a new zest for life.
I mean, like, kind of like similar to a relationship with a person. You mean like kind of like a relationship to a place itself, kind of thing? Is that
like, for example, sometimes we don't even realize the impact of a meeting or the impact of where we're going to be or what's going to be given to us.
Right.
And I think people don't even realize what you actually give to them at this time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're completely correct on that. I think a lot of the times that it's an interesting push-pull, because you're right. It's something that happens at the correct time, but that lesson itself might not be realized until way later on, or the impact might not be felt until later on, kind of thing. And it's not until you look back and you go, okay, wait, if it wasn't for this, and this happening, then that never happens at all. It's that kind of chain of events that continually proves that we are connected in all these kinds of ways that we can't see. And, if there's something more beautiful in life than that, I don't know what it is. Because to me, it's one of the most extraordinary things that you can be a part of, is to feel that connection to places, to people, to even things, I suppose, to sum up the three main categories, but you get the idea. It is something that, again, it's caused me to kind of hide a little bit, because I guess, for me, it's probably a lot tied into my mom's struggles to maintain her mental health, so she's got a lot of the same things that I've got too, but almost to the point where I would say that she's been overloaded with it, to the point where she can't process a lot of the things that I guess I'm able to. And just in taking all that on over time, I think has really kind of, broken her down in several significant ways in that respect. And, so for me, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I want to acknowledge it, but I'm also afraid of how much letting that in, I guess could potentially do, because I certainly do feel a lot. I feel it through, the emotions in music or through melody, or the bending of a note sometimes can, send me into tears on the right day, kind of thing. So it is all, there's definitely a connection to it all, as we've been saying.
And when we grow up, I believe, that our parents or our guardians, whoever it is that we grow up with, it, in a way, sets us for a lifetime of sometimes good, sometimes not so good. And sometimes it's difficult for us to disengage with that from what we see around us as children, because that's so important, especially, I feel, the first 7 years of our life, because that's our view on the world, how we come into the world, how we're born into the world. But one important thing that I've learned in my life is that I am not my surroundings, and I am not my parents and my family or my friends. I am me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important to distinguish that.
It takes a long time to learn that, and it's certainly for me. And I think, there are so many things about the way our society is set up in terms of how it perceives family and what it perceives family to be. And, I think the pressure, of course, exists on all of us. You're born into a family. You're supposed to stay with that family. They're supposed to be a part of your life forever. That's not how it went for me. Especially growing up and having such a different rotating cast of characters in terms of step families and step brothers and step sisters and extended family this and extended family that. But some of those things you're obviously thrown into, and you're at certain points in your life where you can't get past them because either circumstances or you're just too young of a kid and you're living through it, and you don't have another option because that's where you live, kind of thing. But as you get older, you have to make those choices in terms of your own mental health and what's important, and some of them are extremely hard. I had to. Oh, it was probably in 2012 or 13, I think. That was probably one of the hardest years of my life. It was about maybe 6 months into Sleeping Bag Studios becoming a thing. And, so I was trying to get all that off the ground. And at the same time, my family was breaking down harder than it ever had. My relationship with my mom went so south that, unfortunately for me, the only pathway forward that I could have was to finally separate ties for a while. And that's where it remains to this day. It's not done out of malice. It's not done out of spite. It's done out of a complete hope that in doing this, something will maybe trigger in her that, something needs to get better, something needs to get repaired, maybe that want for her to get better will occur. And I don't know if it's wrong of me to assume that that's a possibility, but that's what I like to believe. I like to believe that we're all, that change is possible for all of us, or that evolution is possible for all of us in some way. I don't know if it is, but, honestly, that is my hope.
We can become disappointed also sometimes. And I speak from experience where we sometimes hope that distance can resolve a situation, can change people. Sadly, I think that fundamentally we are who we are.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? You know what you know, and there's not much that can change that. And I've had to examine that so many times over the past 8 years of not talking to her, and still carrying that feeling like, hey, this is just the way things are. There are other things that matter too, like my brother, his health as a handicapped. He's almost 40 now, but he still needs, he's still my younger brother, and he still needs care. And at certain points of our lives, we have to intersect with these people, but, or people that you have conflicts with at any time. And I think, that doesn't mean that you have to be tied to them for life. And it doesn't mean that they have to take away from you in some way. You can be stronger than that. You can not necessarily control the situation, but you can control how it affects you to a degree.
Absolutely, 100%. That is absolutely true. I totally can sympathize with that, because I had one of those sort of epiphanies where you look at your family sometimes, and you look at your parents, or, and you think, well, actually, they're not just playing the role of parents or aunts or uncles. These people are actually human beings that have wishes and desires and sadnesses and sorrows and hopes. And that totally puts everything on its head, because you think, well, just because they're my parents or my aunt or my uncle or my brother or my sister, it doesn't actually mean it's your thing, about the nothingness. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're, a lot of people will disagree with me, but I don't think it matters whether you're connected by blood.
No,
I think it's totally irrelevant.
Yeah. Family has such a different definition for me. And it has nothing to do with blood, to tell you the truth. Like it's, call it strength of character or conviction, or, people you respect and admire. I mean, that's where my, and that's not to say there aren't those instances in my family too. There certainly are. But, there are people that you look up to, and those are, I guess, extended family by some kind of weird stretch of the imagination.
And you can feel, for example, connected to somebody that you've never met. You suddenly meet them, and you actually feel like they are more family than, in some instances, members of your family.
Absolutely. I'm experiencing that right now, Mimi. That's the truth here. So I 100% hear you on that one, because it feels like I've known you for the last 7 years, and I'm pretty sure we still just met today.
I think we met in another life.
Yeah, we must have. Something.
Because, and when you feel it because you know that person, and they can be telling you whatever they want, and it is actually, you're hearing what they're not saying.
Yeah, it's like a concrete truth that you just know inside your core. 100%.
Yeah. I've always wanted a brother.
Well, I won't give you my biological one, but I do have, what do I have? I've got a stepbrother and a brother-in-law that I can negotiate for if you want.
Dear. I always thought, Chris Rea, the singer.
Yep.
So I always had this thing. I know it's mad. I always thought he was my brother. Totally crazy. Yeah. And there was something about him that I thought, I think he's my brother. And it's totally not possible. I mean, everything's possible, but it's not possible in this sphere anyway. And I always had this thing, and my friends always say to me, there's your brother, Chris. And I actually felt like he was my brother. And it's these sort of mad moments in life, weird, mad, sad, moments where you think, I actually know that person. You feel that you know them.
For sure. And, again, I think that, like, going back to that whole, what's fictional and what's not, I think that leads to part of that, that's part of what makes it so extraordinary and so confusing and so wonderful and so full of questions all the time, is because when you feel it, you know it. And it's just whether or not you can somehow find a way to access what that feeling is really all about and what it represents.
Yeah.
And it's, again, you kind of have to find two to tango in that situation. Either the person, hopefully lets you in and you can have that discussion, or you reveal the magic in the place that you're in at the time, and something is shown to you that, you kicked a rock. There was that word you needed to find, or something weird. Who knows, right? It can be anything.
And that's the magic of life. I mean, for example, with your mom or these people, every single person, including ourselves, have agreed to take this role on. Because there must be more to it, as you say. They've taken this role on, and I've spoken about this before, actually, and it's a lady called Betty J. Eady, I believe, and she wrote a book called Embraced by the Light. And she had a near-death experience.
Right.
And where she went was extraordinary because it was explained to her about people that we agree, actually. We agree before we come to this earth who are going to be our parents, our siblings, our friends, and what role we're going to play.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I am convinced, Jer, of that. I'm absolutely convinced of that because you know it, don't you? You think, why is this person acting in this way? What is it they're trying to teach me? Why have I met these people? But at the end of it, what would we do without them? Because there's something so strong, for example, that your mom or people in my life are trying to teach me, and they're going to get stronger. The messages, the vibration of them will become stronger until we learn what they're trying to teach us.
That makes total sense. And, there's so much in that I'm just trying to figure out right now. I'm sitting here thinking in real time as to how that actually plays out and works, but you're absolutely right. And I guess what I'm wondering right now is, like, if that's the case and we can be placed around, people that I guess have intended to play a specific role, is it also theoretical that maybe we got placed with some people by random accident as well? Like, I guess what I mean by that is when you have a situation like, say, my mom and myself, where we either couldn't agree or just constantly butted heads or whatever, is it that the lesson itself is taking longer to be revealed, or are we just like continually, two rams butting heads with each other because we can't actually communicate on that level or time that we're currently on,
Yeah, that's an interesting.
I don't know what the answer to that is, but
neither do I. But in all of that, I met a very, very wise person who was a spiritual master. And this was interesting. He always said that there is a reason for every single person that we meet in our life, and that person that we meet is actually reflecting ourselves back to us. So whoever we meet, there's an aspect of what we don't like in somebody. That aspect actually is within us.
That, again, makes that's a wise person that told you that, for sure, and that absolutely makes sense to me. It's that's probably a tougher thing, I would think, for some people to acknowledge, but that's definitely something that I'd be willing to concede right away. Like, there's so many times where I almost notice something similar to me in a person, and that it kind of provokes almost a negative reaction from me rather than an automatically positive one. And that's, I guess it can, maybe I just don't notice the positive side of things as much in that regard, because I don't really spend a lot of time, in a land of like self-praise or anything. I'm kind of in that constant grind of pushing myself to do more and be better and all that kind of stuff. Even if I'm willing to let it happen at a natural evolution, I'm still kind of frustrated by the process. I want it to go and I want it to move faster. But people play a huge role in that when it comes right down to it. And if you're not running into the right, it's no different than, you could think of it like vitamins or the right ingredients to a recipe. You need those things to be able to get to that full picture or masterpiece that you're looking to create, or that symphony inside. Hey, we were talking about that.
Yeah.
That symphony. Yeah. You need to be able to complete that symphony, and every one of those people is going to give you some sort of a piece that can play a huge role. And whether or not that comes through what you might perceive as negative interaction or positive interaction, sometimes, like you said, it's just a matter of enough time and hindsight and looking back and reflecting on it to really appreciate just how much it's going to bring to your life in some way that you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we shouldn't try. My grandfather always said to me, don't expect a scorpion to be a lamb, or a fox to be a fish, or a wolf, to be a pussycat, because every person has their own characteristics and their own nature. And we try to make people into something that they're not. Right. And they can never be. And then we're totally disappointed. But we just have to, and I speak for myself as well, I've been thoroughly disappointed. Yeah. And it's awful, because you think, well, how is it that they don't understand this? And why can't they just, see something from my point of view, or see what they've done? But the point is, they can't, because their nature doesn't allow it.
That's exactly right, Mimi. That's what we were talking about before, in terms of just like, I want so many things for so many people, and I can see what I believe is absolutely the potential of where they can go. And I want to help them get there. And I want to do everything in my power to be the person that not necessarily the end all and be all person, but to just play my role and to help them to get to that place. And it's such a bizarre thing to be able to see something that quite often they can't see themselves. And again, you want this stuff for people. You want them to achieve that greatness of whatever our perception of that greatness might be. And that projection sometimes really seems to get me into trouble. That's where I find the toughest part of doing what I do, because I guess the best way I can put it is I carry such a pride in what I do, and I want that for everybody, that it's almost like when people get too close to me and they feel like they're not living up to that, that's when they start to disappear, and it's something that I don't know how to turn that off. Like I'm very honest, I'm very upfront, I'm very open, I'm not overly blunt. I understand what I think is when and where to say something to somebody, and hopefully kind of be that person that plays that role in sending them into a new direction that might be more successful for them or more beneficial. But it's a very tough call to make, and kind of, I guess, know with full confidence that you're ever doing the right thing or not interfering too much. Like I struggle with that all the time. If this stuff that I feel is real, how much of a right do I still have to use that if other people don't quite understand it or feel those things or see those connections? Is it right for me to steer them along? And I think, hopefully it is, because that's the method that I've chosen to go with. But I don't know,
Well, it is right. It is right.
I like to think so. I agree with you.
Of course. And it is right, because that is what you see. That is who your nature is. And for those that can't appreciate it or they're not ready to hear it, then that's absolutely fine. But what's important is that we are true to ourselves and to the job, in a way, in inverted commas, that we were put on this earth to do.
Right. Yeah.
Whether someone else doesn't really appreciate it or doesn't get it, it's not really our problem. The point is that, the sun, what does the sun do? People can complain that it's too hot, but the sun still remains shining and being what it was created to be.
That's a perfect metaphor. I love that. And you're right. That's, or at least again, that's certainly the way I feel, I think it's just important that at the end of the day, you're able to rest your head knowing that you did what you feel is the best thing you can in all situations. And especially when it comes to dealing with people, in my opinion, I don't know, maybe it's different for when we're by ourselves, but I don't think so. It's probably about the same, but I'm more conscious of it when I'm with, other people. It's important, I guess, to me. And I think it would be awesome if that was something that everybody shared, but I guess it is part of what makes certain interactions like this unique and kind of helps you appreciate that there really are multiple levels of consciousness and awareness out there in the world that, some of them might seem almost like computer simulations and redundant, but there are some that are so fantastically unique that you might still feel like you've known them for years, but at the same time, you appreciate just how different that is from any other feeling that you can have out there.
Mm-hmm. And it's a mystical and beautiful experience to be fully who you are.
It is. It's a skin that everybody should be able to wear. And it's one that is almost, it really is so incredibly rare to find those people out there that have no problem at all. They're not affected by what somebody else would say ever. They're built of this, not necessarily steel, but confidence. And I think a lot of that, I like to think I'm almost on my way there, I get to this point where, it's not really so much that things people would say wouldn't affect me at this point. It's just that they don't affect me in the same way they used to. Not in the way that, or at least not the negative things. If there's any negative thing to be said, I don't honestly run into too much negativity out there these days. I'm working in the music industry, and that's a pretty positive place to be. But, when it comes to that kind of stuff, I think it's really just, we all have to be mindful of that projection and our perception. And, I always used to say, you have to measure intentions, because there are so many people out there that can't express themselves the right way or don't have the same ability to express themselves to you in a way that you can understand it. And, you have to really look at that person and go, okay, so fundamentally, I might feel like this comment came out weird, but really considering the source, did they mean it weird? Or are they just not saying things the right way? You know what I mean? And a lot of people don't have that gift of just being able to say what they mean, how they want to say it, or as directly as we might like to hear it. Mm-hmm. But, you have to kind of recognize that there's not a lot of people out there that are really trying to do you harm. So it's almost weird that human nature kind of tends to jump to such negative conclusions quite often, because really we all want good things, I think. And that's the kind of core that we share between us. And it's just a matter of, finding a way that we can communicate with each other to get those things to the surface as best you can.
And there is always darkness and there is always light. And once we know our own darkness, I think then we can really begin to understand someone else's.
For sure. I think that was, it was a very important part for me to understand that, over time, learning that depressed teenager that I was, again, still had some hope of being something else, but I didn't get to the point that I'm at now by discounting who that person used to be. It was more of an acceptance kind of thing, and learning that, there's a lot of beauty in sadness. There really is. If you were to look at it, even on just kind of like an emotional level, in terms of like if you were to stand all your emotions side by side, well, sadness still ranks just as high as any of them do. You know what I mean? They all have a maximum capacity and a minimum capacity. So theoretically, if that's a part of us, we have to learn to accept and love that too, and appreciate it in some way. And it doesn't mean that we have to spend our lives feeling sad, but, there is a role that it plays, and it certainly, it can be a very enlightening one. I think a lot of, certainly in music, I know specifically, it's almost way harder to write in a happy gear for quite a few musicians and bands out there than it is to write a sad song.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and we have to kind of ask ourselves, why is that? What is it about that side that we tap into, that sadness? And, if we're so willing to tap into it, well, then how bad really is it? Part of us, we like it.
That's an interesting one. When I was young and I used to write, I always write with music. And I remember being at school and we were giving, we had to write about a certain subject or a certain experience. I would actually always, Jer, listen to sad music.
Right.
And I would be sitting there thinking, what the hell are you doing? But that's when it felt real. Right.
100%. And, one of the interesting things to me, especially about my brother, because again, he's, what is he? He's 39. He's 39 in days here. He's going to be like 39 in 2 weeks. So happy early birthday to my brother. But
happy birthday.
In his mind, he's probably still about, maybe about 5 or 6, maybe maximum 8, and really his motor skills and speaking skills really aren't there. He's never really had that ability to communicate, but I've always certainly felt I understand exactly what he means, because he's never needed those words to communicate with me. And one of the interesting things, though, really, is that I've been doing a lot of phone calls with him lately because of being out here on the eastern side of Canada. He's still out there in the west. So now a lot of the times he'll just want to play music with me on the phone. He'll want to sing for me. And I absolutely love it. It's the greatest thing in the world. Half of it you can't understand, and that's more than fine. I couldn't care less. I just love hearing the expression in his voice, the emotion in it. But what's really interesting, and I can't break this habit, and I don't know if, again, this is where I don't know if it's my right to do it or if I should even be trying, but it's sad songs that he really connects with as well. And I don't know if that's, again, partly related to how we grew up as kids. It could very well be, right?
Yeah.
But it's also part of that sincerity, that melody. Like I said, these are the endearing qualities of music that tend to resonate with us the strongest. And it's just so interesting to me that, to see this 39-year-old man that I will always know as my little brother, he's still so affected and so moved by these songs at what I know to be an age that's so much less than the years he's spent on earth. You know what I mean? He's with him being about 5 or 6, it's like you get almost an adult perspective into a child's mind in a way. You get to see how these emotions of music and the things that they present to his own thought process affect him. And he can dive right into tears within like 30 seconds of being on the phone with me sometimes, just because the first thing he'll do is hit play and start playing a song. But the opposite is equally true. He, you know, if he is willing to play a happy song, he's more than happy to be singing at the top of his lungs. And it's a beautiful thing. It's just interesting that he tends to gravitate towards the sad songs. I don't know why that is.
I think all of us do.
I tend to agree. Yeah, I mean, I think so too. Those are the songs that always stuck with me. So, I was even talking to my wife the other day and saying, how can I blame him for these being the songs that he goes to, when that's what I would show my friends? You know what I mean? Like, if I would show them a great song, it's probably not going to be the happiest song of the year.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I'm trying to get this hour-long phone call in with my brother who's across the country from me, and I just want the guy to have a good time. And so I have to kind of wrestle with this balance of, I don't want him to obviously spend his time on the phone crying with me, but at the same time, he needs to be able to express his natural emotions as to whatever it is he's feeling, and I have to be ready for that. So it's kind of a really unique relationship that it's grown into, especially over these past 5 years, just kind of really understanding him on a different level and kind of just being present with him and understanding that, yeah, he's going to go through some crazy emotions that I can't even comprehend or process from his point of view. But there are so many fundamental core similarities to why he's kind of in that mode or feeling the way he's feeling, or what it is that music brings out of him in that respect. I kind of understand why he ends up, in tears over singing like What a Wonderful World, or, like that's one of his absolutely favorite songs. And it's a beautiful song. Everybody loves it, right? Like, it's a great song. Or Bohemian Rhapsody was another great example.
Well, that's a great song as well.
Yeah. It is, but it's also got that point where all of a sudden Freddie Mercury's gone into the nothing really matters. And it's just, all of a sudden it's devastatingly sad. And it's like, so I get to ride on these, because he'll put that on in the background at full blast while I'm trying to talk to him. And, we get to ride through the emotions of the entire song together from a completely different perspective, from his perspective. And to hear him, because he's got zero filter. He doesn't know any better. He doesn't have that pretense and guard that so many people have. He is free-flowing emotion out in the wide open all of the time, and it is gorgeous to see. And, just to be able to take that, to have that ability to experience it with him at the same time has just been such an extraordinary gift. I'm on a tangent here, but I can't say enough about it. I love that.
Beautiful. Have you contemplated that maybe the songs that he chooses are things he wants to say to you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I mean, right? Like, as much as I want to discourage him from being sad, at the same time, I have to acknowledge that he's trying to communicate with me in what ways he can, right? And it's totally different than anybody would communicate with anybody else. It's an unspoken thing that, it takes a while to really kind of understand that, like I really didn't get that at first, that's what it was. And my automatic reaction would be to, hey man, come on, like, why don't we put on a happy song? Let's do that instead. Because that's part of your natural instinct. You want to help and you want to heal. And, if somebody's hurting or somebody's crying, that's your natural instinct. But at the same time, somebody in his circumstance has such a different palette of how they express themselves that it's just, it really is something, like you said, you have to acknowledge this is how he's communicating. Almost because he's aware that he doesn't quite have the right words. So, hey, maybe this is what says it for him.
Yeah, and maybe also, there's so many levels to this, but maybe also in that piece of music and that song, that's the message he wants to give to you about your life.
Hey, again, I never would have even considered that. And that's a beautiful perspective to have on that as well. Like some sort of, maybe it's like, it's knowledge to him that he's learned through music that is very important. And that knows that I know that too, and that's a beautiful thing to have said, because there are so many things that, again, they're not redundant. There's just similar experiences. Like, he will play What a Wonderful World is almost a guarantee to come up in every phone call that we have. So that recurring desire, not just because of familiarity or comfort or the fact that he's only got 6 songs, he's got tons. He specifically chooses to send that one my way all of the time.
I wonder what he's trying to tell you with it.
Absolutely, right? I mean, I could tell you all the times I felt like that about this kid throughout my lifetime. Believe me, it would add up pretty quickly and pretty significantly. I have often thought about what life is like through his perspective, because it's been such a beautiful place. He has always found a way to occasionally be sad, but my brother's default gear is nothing but positive, happy, and just absolutely thrilled to be around. And that's just the way he has always been. It's the way he's wired. It's the way he's built. And it's almost like time itself doesn't exist. If I saw him tomorrow, it would be like I saw him yesterday. And I can't even imagine what a gorgeous thing that is too. Like it becomes really on this side of the fence that it becomes extremely important to not take that for granted, because to him, no time passes at all. And for me, obviously, I know that it was last Sunday that I talked to him last time, and I'm counting down the days until the next Sunday or whenever it is I pick up the phone to call him again. Time is very important to most of us, or at least it's something that we acknowledge all of the time. With him, it's not even a factor, not even something he's aware of. So it's always very much a present and a be here now situation with my brother Matt. He's a great kid.
And in all his sort of infinite beauty, somehow maybe he's even saying to you to go and explore the world a little bit.
I think so. Yeah, that's another good takeaway from that particular reference. He's in a care facility right now on Vancouver Island, and he's living a pretty good, secure life right now. He's always kind of been in a care facility at some point, or of some type, I mean. And, some are better than others when it comes to social programs and whatnot. And he's really in a place right now that has inspired and brought the best out of him in so many ways. He's talking better than he ever has. He's more communicative than he's ever been. So to think that he would get to that point, that he would be able to communicate in that way, is such an extraordinary thing to think about in itself. Because when we were growing up, I mean, honestly, it seemed like, the cap or the ceiling might be like getting to the point where he was about 4 or 5, and that might be it. And we'd never really maybe even know what it was that he thought. And, maybe we still won't, I don't know. I think those closest to him definitely get a lot out of that relationship and really understand what it is that he's saying or what he's singing about or what kind of emotion he's feeling. But it's another thing entirely to witness just how slow he's been moving. And I don't say that with any disrespect. It's just the facts of the matter. He's progressing at a very slow rate. And it's just interesting to have that kind of hope and want. It's almost like how in The Flight of the Navigator, if you ever saw that movie as a kid, how the younger brother ends up traveling through time, and when he arrives back at his home, he's the older brother, but his younger brother is now older than him, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of I'm hopeful to the point where, now I can see it, and I can see it on the horizon, and I'm like, we will have that conversation one day. Just that 100% normal, free speaking, absolutely perfectly understood conversation. And I think that's just something I never considered when I was a kid. I didn't think it was a possibility, but because of how much progress he's made in this last little while, it's like I can see it on the horizon, and it's all I want for him, because I can see how much he tries. He tries to communicate in so many different ways. And, I think that's what he wants. I think he just wants to be able to simply say what it is that he wants to say, and not see in our eyes that we're either trying to figure it out or we're trying to understand. I think he's almost frustrated by that. I think he's at the point where he just wants to find those people that really get him. And do I understand that? 100%. I get that completely. I think so many of us do. I think, again, it's just he's put it in a much more rudimentary level. But yeah, that's what he's saying.
My goodness. What an extraordinary life.
Lots to unpack here,
eh? I knew you would anyway have an extraordinary life. And I know that you have an extraordinary life. And this is what the beauty, isn't it, of everybody that we meet, is that they have so many stories that are a continuation. It's not like they just have one story. We are all part of each other's story, and things that you've said to me tonight, I will think about, and I will contemplate these things. And I'm sure the listeners out there also, because we have so much to learn from each other. And I am so grateful, Jer, that you agreed and honored me with your presence tonight.
I have had an absolute riot, Mimi. Thank you so much for having me. It is, to say it means a lot is just putting it mildly. I absolutely feel like I stumbled upon a friendship that I've got to keep this going somehow. So I don't know how we're going to do that, but we're going to figure that out, right? That's going to happen some way?
Absolutely. Okay. And that's what the beauty of it is. And that is, things like this show us that there's so much to be discovered about our life. And, don't give up. But when we feel that, the world is a dark place, it in fact isn't. Because indeed we are the lights, and we send signals, like fire signals or radio signals or something out there that attracts us to our tribe in a way.
Absolutely. There's a beacon in the soul somewhere in that you can see that light reflected right back to you.
Yeah. Beautiful. I'm really, really grateful, Jer, because it is proof again to me, not that I needed it, but I needed a reminder, as we all do, that some really beautiful souls exist, that we meet on some other level at some other time in our existence on this planet.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said earlier, with me feeling like so much of this is imagined or fictional or not real in my head sometimes. When you run into somebody that's so entirely grounded like yourself, that has such vivid perspective on how things do connect, and conviction, belief, understanding, you hear these kinds of strengths in the way that you communicate and the things that you say. And for me, I can't even say thank you enough, because it does help me feel like I'm not crazy, to put it in the most basic way. I'm not alone, and that there are other people out there that they just do. They feel things differently, and they understand and they see things differently. And, it's not that we don't know there are more of us. There's tons. There's lots. They are rare, but there's more. And I think the more that, like you said, the more we get brave about it, the more we acknowledge it, the more we put ourselves out there, and people like me stop hiding.
Yeah.
The more we have that ability to kind of maybe even move the needle in the whole planet in a whole different direction, right? I don't think any of us really know what we're capable of because of that. Like, who knows what would happen if we all got together? That would be one thing. That would be something to see.
That would be truly remarkable. And I'm still hoping and praying that we are going to be doing that. And even conversations that we're having are the beginning of beautiful weaves and, the tapestry that we are actually creating out there for all those souls that are meant to, in fact, change the world for a better place.
That is what it's all about, right there. To me, that's 100% the mission and the goal. Somehow to make this a better place. And I think we have that ability. We all have that ability. And, it doesn't have to be monumental. I would like it to be monumental. I'm sure you'd like it to be monumental too. And for many of
going to be. I think it's going to be.
Yeah, and it could, there will definitely be. All I'm saying is that, people need to be mindful of the fact that every small part of that equation counts for a whole lot. You know what I mean? So whatever contribution they can make into finding that progression forward, to finding that next level of whatever it is that we need to do, the being conscious of that forward direction sometimes, and just knowing that you're contributing however you can, is so essential. And I think everybody's getting to a point, especially over this past year, where that's becoming a lot more important to them. So I think you're absolutely right. I think there are very good things on the horizon, and hopefully some monumental shifts in terms of that awakening of humanity that you mentioned, because I think that is very much coming.
I think we're in the process of it. And I think that if we, as people, as individuals, as souls, want to not just survive, it's not about surviving, it's about lifting our consciousness to a level. We hear this consciousness everywhere, but in reality, it's true. If we can rise above all this that's going on to a place with like-minded beings and souls that share that symphony, we are the ones that can actually create that platform, in a way, that pathway ready for other people that maybe are a little afraid to walk upon.
The conductors of that symphony, right?
Yes. Yes.
That's where we get to. That's what we're looking to get to. We want to be the conductors.
Yeah.
We know where those pieces fit, and we just got to help them get there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we know that those people were born to play that instrument. And once we see them sit down in that chair, we know it's the right chair they were meant to sit in.
Yes.
And it's people it's people, hopefully people like yourself and I that, we play some sort of a leadership role in that respect, where we're lucky enough to have that situation to somebody in some way, shape, or form,
And when you said earlier about, I'm not sure whether words to this effect, I'm not sure if I should say this to people, do I have a right to say it or don't I? Well, absolutely you do, because the conductor has to know the people in the orchestra.
True. And they need to, I don't want to say need to know their role, like I'm coming
they
at it
do.
from
You need to know why the hell are you on this planet.
They, they will be more comforted in knowing where they fit. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we all need to take our roles now to...
Oh, sorry. I think my connection just dropped out for a second.
Hello?
Yeah. No, I'm still here. Are you
still
there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Still here. Hello?
Might be breaking up here. I'm not.
Hello?
Yeah, no, I absolutely know what you mean. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
I think, okay, yeah. So, I mean, I think what you're talking about in terms of a role and just having that defined place that we fit in, there's such a comfort in that. There's a comfort from both sides. There's a comfort in knowing where that place is that you fit, and there's a comfort in being that conductor and knowing that you helped do what you can to guide a person to their full potential or where they belong. And I think, if anything, that's the true beauty of leadership, is the people that really get that don't exploit that. They celebrate it. That's a badge of honor. It's something that we're able to look at and know that that's an achievement beyond any kind of personal achievement we might be able to experience, because it branches off into so many other good things that person that you affect in a positive way will be able to go and spread that positivity in their own way countless times throughout that whole existence of the timeline or whatever it is that we're doing here, And I think it's just one of those, it's like one of those parts of leadership that I think it would just be great if it was always something that we could acknowledge in other people and encourage. And I think that it's not necessarily that we don't. I think it's just one of those kind of quiet nods of respect. I think sometimes you see those people out there doing the thing that they were born to do, and you can't help but watch it and just marvel sometimes, or listen if it's a music thing, like is often in my world, and just really appreciate it for what it actually is, and just how next level it is for a person when they found that place where they truly fit. There's a line in a song by a Canadian band called the Tragically Hip. You ever heard of them?
No, I haven't.
No? Okay. Huge Canadian band. Basically, they would replace the Canadian anthem in a heartbeat if you took a poll throughout this country. Right now, they would tell you any day of the week. But this guy, Gord Downey, the lead singer, he wrote a line in a song once that I thought was the most brilliant thing I'd ever heard. It was is a line that says, "There's nothing uglier than a man hitting his stride." And I thought about that line for what felt like a decade. And I came to the conclusion that he was actually saying the opposite of what he was saying. It was like almost saying, like, I'm so good at this that it's ugly. Almost like it's so perfected that I can twist it like this. You know what I mean? I'm so good with my words that watch this happen. I'm going to make you think I'm saying the opposite thing. But really what I mean to say is when somebody's found their place and found that spot where they belong, there's nothing more beautiful than that.
Yeah.
And the way that he was able to do that was by saying the complete opposite. And this could just totally be my theory. I don't have this confirmed by anything. And unfortunately, he's passed away now. But that was the way that line particularly hit me. I went from thinking there's nothing uglier than a man hitting his stride, than thinking there's nothing more beautiful than seeing somebody that is meant to be doing what they do and doing it so well. You know?
That actually, in a way, is a masterpiece.
Yeah. It was, and I guarantee you, there's probably not many people that have been out there and probably spent that much time thinking about that one line from that song. But
Yeah.
to me, it just went straight to the heart, and I went, why would that be an ugly thing? Why would that be a horrible thing to see somebody at the top of their game? That's got to be a great thing, isn't it? And then it was just like the light went on, and I went, oh man, this wordsmith just got me. Yeah, absolutely, that's what he means. And it was kind of this whole epiphany. And ever since then, I've just kind of really used that as a metaphor for seeing people, whether they're an athlete at the top of their game, or, a really well-written article, or a fantastic new spoken word album like Beyond the Horizons, or something that shows an artist out there, or a person that's dedicated to their craft, or whatever it is they're committed to, but really hit that peak performance of just not necessarily the best showing, but that comfortability, that being in the skin they were born to be in right there in that moment, is such a beautiful thing to witness.
It is actually, when you see the beauty of somebody actually being all that they are meant to be, it is heavenly.
Yeah.
Truly,
and I don't know how we couldn't want that for every single person that's out there, right? And I think that's part of what tends to get us to that point where we look at somebody and we go, we want you to get to this point here, whether or not that's right for them or not. We just want it because it's a beautiful thing to see, and it's certainly addictive to witness when you find it. You just want to spread that feeling of, hey, go out and reach your max potential. Go out and do everything it is that you think will get you the most out of life, because like we said from the very get-go here, it is absolutely too short. And don't hold back on what you want to say. Don't hold back on what you want to do. Go out there and do the things that you can while you can. That's what this whole place is about.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
It's life is less than the blink of an eye. And we have to realize that. And I think we have been given a huge opportunity now to realize that and to do what we need to do, really, to leave our mark here on earth, but also to, as we spoke about, to bring about this, huge awakening that is happening at the moment. Amazing. And I think that you go a long way in doing that, in what you do, Jer. And I'm grateful, for your presence here tonight. And I feel that maybe, who knows, after tonight, what changes you have brought to the listeners out there, to my life, to their life, to your own life. And I think it would be interesting, as they say, watch this space. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me, Mimi. I can't say thank you enough. I truly appreciate the opportunity to talk all this kind of stuff out with you. I'm hoping this is just part of a mega series that we'll create for who knows how long of a friendship we get here. Maybe we just keep for beautiful. Who knows. Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. And I really sincerely mean that, Jer. It has really been a pleasure. And it's a rare thing. And when you have these rare moments, it really profoundly affects you in ways that we can never know.
Absolutely. I'm like, I don't know if vibrating is the right word, but I'm energized right now. You know what I mean? Like that's you get that, you pick that aura up from people that fully get it. And it's such a pleasure and a privilege to have been able to talk to you, Mimi. I've got such a respect for your writing and the way that you communicate that it's meant so much to me. And it's one of those things, right? I struggle with this industry so much because of the insincerity that I tend to find in it. And that it's kind of justified. Like I get it. It's a promotions thing that usually people meet me through. And promotions has got such an insincere kind of connotation to it, but it doesn't have to be that way. You know, a lot of just my production is maybe I'm writing a press release or biography for somebody. But at the end of the day, what those things are and find out what we've got in common. And when we can do that, we open the doors to such fantastic opportunities and new relationships. And I don't know, it's just a whole beautiful world of expression out there that I think is still largely untapped and it's so close to us all, you know? Yeah. We're all able to put our hands in that same pool, you know? We're all able to feel, but everybody still kind of has a part in there.
Yeah.
And I think the more that we can kind of embrace and bring them to the fold and lead the way, the more everybody else finds their courage to do it too, right?
Yeah.
Everything gets better.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Very true. Now, it's been amazing. I feel like I've been on a journey now for about 3,000 years. It really, you know, like, no. This is the whole point. It's been an adventure. Yeah. It's been like 1,001 Arabian Nights, you know, because every part of the story has something to teach. And that's what's so wonderful about it. Amazing, absolutely amazing, I have to say. Now, as we come to the end of the show, I want to ask you, where can people get in contact with you?
People can reach me through sleepingbagstudios.ca. That's our main website. That's pretty much where I'm hanging out all the time. And where can they reach me? They can. That's exactly it. I mean, there's contact information there, and believe me, you're the kind of person that's willing to reach out. You will find that I am the kind of person that will respond.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And I always ask my guests this at the end.
Yep.
In a couple of lines, Jer, what would you say to the listeners out there that something to keep them hopeful, to give them that resonance of light to keep going?
I would say fall in love with purpose. Purpose as to what it might mean to somebody other than me or one person to the next is always going to be different, and that's fine. But fall in love with purpose, whatever that purpose is to you, and let that be your inspiration and your guide. Find meaning in something. Find meaning in anything. And let that be your guide. Just those are the things that matter. You know, those are the things that are resonating inside you. If you can fall in love with purpose, wherever you may find it, it will motivate you to keep going forward, and you will find strengths you did not even know you had.
Wow. That's something to etch on your heart. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much. And I'm still in awe at the sort of things that you have said and also the things that you write. So I would definitely say to the listeners to check out Jer, because there's so much more. There's so much more. And once again, thank you really sincerely for coming and sharing part of your story.
You are far too kind and such a sweet individual, and just by far, just such a giving personality and just a wonderful human being, Mimi. I just can't, you know, you're just fantastic. I am absolutely honored to have been here with you, and I certainly look forward to keeping in touch with you in the future. So if there's anything that I can do for you in whatever ways our worlds cross paths, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Oh, thank you very much. And likewise.
Will do.
Well, have a beautiful rest of the day. Or is it evening there now?
We're getting close now. Mimi, we did pretty good here. It's 5:30 over here on our side now. So I'm pretty proud of us. I am looking forward to next time. So
yeah, absolutely.
You be well, my friend. And if there's anything else at all that you ever need, you just send it my way. I'll do what I can to help.
Ditto. All right. Well, take care.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right then. Bye. Jer Gladstone, what an absolute delight to have him here on the show. Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, look after yourselves and lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Secrets for an Inspirational Life, brought to you by your host, Mimi Novic. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast and see you in the next episode. For more information about Mimi Novic and her books, music, and inspirational work, take a look at her website, www.miminovic.co.uk.